massive pipeline designed to channel natural gas from Nigeria to the west, designed to move natural gas to Europe and the US, was under construction. Chevron US invested $13 billion to this pipeline, but with the new wokeness of most West African countries, Niger Republic has said no way. This has sent shockwaves across Europe, because the US already blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. This was the first pipeline that bypassed Ukraine and Poland to deliver Russian natural gas directly to West Europe. Africa is unquestionably the richest continent in the world. The Democratic Republic of the Congo alone has untapped mineral deposits that are worth over $35 trillion. RD Congo has limitless water supply, richest fertile soil of any land in the world. Beneath the soil, abundant world-class mineral deposits of cobalt, gold, diamonds, petroleum, timber, potash, lead, zinc, uranium, copper, phosphates, gold, manganese, natural gas, coltan and derivatives of niobium and tantalum, iron ore, lithium, beryllium, rare earths, monazite, euxenite, niobium, tantalum, columbo, tantalite, pyrochlore, zirconium, titanium, and germanium. A mosaic of rivers, forests, savannas, swamps, and flooded forests, the Congo Basin is the heartbeat of biodiversity in the world. The Democratic Republic of Congo is the richest country in the world, but unfortunately home to some of the poorest people in the world. The same applies to most African countries. This is not a coincidence, it is by design. If the bulk of the world's resources is nested in Africa, then Africans must be manipulated into poverty so the West can maintain a rich lifestyle. In the same vein, the IMF introduced the Structural Adjustment Program, which was disguised as a method of debt payment, which in actuality cripples the GDP of the global South. In practicality for Nigeria, SAP was the deliberate devaluation of the Nigerian currency for a space of 32 years. The devaluation was masked as a way to reduce importation and increase local production, by reducing the international purchasing power of the local entrepreneur. But when the local currency is worthless against the dollar, the local entrepreneur cannot purchase raw materials internationally, as international trade is facilitated by the international currency, which is the American dollar, that he can no longer afford. Local production became too expensive. It was so bad that it was more affordable to just export all products than produce them locally. All available dollars was mopped up and used for importation, further impoverishing the people. SAP led to inflation, unemployment, removal of subsidy from government-subsidized products, which further impoverished Africans. Lest we forget, SAP was supposedly an economic intervention by the IMF. Was it? Or an agenda was at play? As Alex Gladstein, Chief Strategy Officer at the Human Rights Foundation, puts it in his book Hidden Repression, how the IMF and World Bank sell exploitation as development. Yes, they sell exploitation as development to Africa. Hear him explain how Africa is poor by design.
This was not a conspiracy, it was just a known thing, meaning the government of Zaire had to place IMF officials in its government, in the treasury, in control of the economy. And we would shape the economy, usually to do two things in the tropics. We would focus on extractive industries, so let's get this stuff out of the ground as fast as possible without any benefits accruing to the local population. In fact, we'd often ruin the environment around them and make their life miserable. And number two, agriculture stuff. So we would force them to do this kind of industrial scale agriculture, usually of things that they couldn't eat, that they would export to us for our consumption. So we would engineer their society to do this and to be more dependent. And in order to do so, we would devalue the currency. And you basically want to shrink the economy. You don't want the government to be providing any subsidies to its people, healthcare, education. No, that's only for rich countries. But beyond that, there's nothing for the people left over. Of course, the dictator takes his cut. That's what the IMF does to countries.
So the blueprint of the Western-owned development bodies and Western leaders are to instate puppet leaders who will dance to their tune for bribes, grant African countries loan facilities that have a compounding interests to ensure they cannot pay back. And when they fail to pay, they come up with intervention programs to further impoverish them, and with their puppet leaders, milk the natural resources off the continent. All these create hard times, and with hard times, skilled professionals leave in droves, causing a massive brain drain and further impacting the economy negatively. It's all a hustle for natural resources. Now let's focus on the crisis in West Africa and the true cause and puppet masters behind it all. Russia has signed agreements for military cooperation with over 40 African countries. Putin made the announcement during the second and final day of the second Russia-Africa summit, saying we are developing partnerships in military and military technical cooperation with more than 40 African states to strengthen the defense capabilities of the countries. Russia is clearly inciting African countries to fight a proxy war with their Western enemies. But the Niger coup is not just a military takeover, it is a revolution against Western French and U.S. influence. It is a revolt against colonial tax being paid to France. 14 former French colonies in Africa pay a colonial tax amounting to about $500 billion. These countries are Benin, Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon. This process allows France to appropriate about 85% of the former colony's annual income. As a result, African countries face financial difficulties and have to borrow back their own money from the French central bank as debts that must be paid back with compounding interests to further impoverish the Africans and put them in a perpetual position of servitude to France. France argues that it is the money it spent on buildings and infrastructure constructed more than a century ago. The Niger coup leader Gen Tiani and his soldiers say enough is enough, enough of slaving to feed France, enough of Niger's uranium being used to generate electricity to power France while they depend on Nigeria for electricity. The United States have started dropping massive amounts of military cargo right near the Niger border with its warplanes. They are getting ready to attack Niger, and their African puppet leaders have been instructed to do same. The people of Niger, tens of thousands of people, are marching and saying no to poverty, no to the West stealing their uranium, no to France taking all their national earnings till eternity. This has inspired the Senegalese to also rise up against Western colonial governments systematically stealing from their country, the CIA, MI6, and other. Western intelligence services are doing whatever they can right now, spinning their wheels, trying to hold on to power in these countries with their puppet governments. Guinea has also announced their support for Niger. West African countries are tired of neo-slavery. Meanwhile, a massive pipeline designed to channel natural gas from Nigeria to the West, designed to move natural gas to Europe and the US, was under construction. Chevron US invested $13 billion to this pipeline, but with the new wokeness of most West African countries, Niger Republic has said no way. This has sent shockwaves across Europe, because the US already blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. This was the first pipeline that bypassed Ukraine and Poland to deliver Russian natural gas directly to West Europe. The US blew up this pipeline with the intent to put up their own pipeline in Nigeria, but getting this pipeline to completion is now a problem for obvious reasons. In a nutshell, West African countries are saying enough is enough. We are sovereign countries, get out of here. We are going to keep our own minerals and make our own decisions. And Russia is giving them that option right now. We want you to keep your sovereignty. We want you to be an independent country, not a slave to the West. The people of Africa want to gain back their wealth, their minerals, and stop giving it away to America and Europe. Africans want their uranium, their gold, their iron, their phosphate, their oil, their gas, and this scares the West because this means that true democracy will take place in Africa when people actually own their own land and wealth. Russia's way of fighting the West for its bombings is waking up the Western colonies and empowering them to revolt. Niger's coup isn't happening in a vacuum. This isn't a singular event. They're now pushing back against this neocolonialism in a larger multipolar world. Africans are seeking to regain their national sovereignty. The West is desperate to put back its shackles on the feet of West Africa, and they are inciting their African puppet leaders to take the lead. It is ludicrous for Africans to fight a war or destabilize the wishes of the populace of a neighboring country in order to please Western puppet masters. No African country or group of countries have the moral right to reinstate an ousted puppet leader in another sovereign country. No Western or European leader wants any good for Africa, not even Russia. Every good they do for Africa is for their own interest and to gain an upper hand in the access to siphon the natural resources God has given Africans. What do you suggest Francophone African countries should do, considering the pressure being mounted on them by the West and the likelihood of attacks from the US and puppet leaders controlled by the West? Should they avoid conflict and return to status quo, or they should damn the consequences and fight to the finish? Please state your opinion in the comment section.
Thank you so much for sticking with us till the end. Please endeavor to share, like, comment, subscribe and hit the notification bell to be alerted of more informative and entertaining videos. Till next time, do have a good one.